NFL Week 17 is here, and it's Tech Week, Problem Week, apparently. So, whatever tech issues we have that can go wrong, go wrong. How is it going with you, Ron?
Well, obviously, a busy period of the year. It's almost the time of the year where I say, I wish I was doing just college or just NFL, but everything just hits all at once. And then a week from now, it'll be a little bit quieter, but still embracing it, coming off a decent week, enjoying the holiday action, minefield of the bowl games, and week 17. I have a feeling, Chris, this is going to be a very interesting brainstorming session because neither one of us are probably prepared with any live bets today. There's still a lot to process. There's still a lot of matchup analysis that I haven't even got to and won't get to for a couple of days. But we pretty much know what teams are trying and what teams aren't, and maybe we'll touch upon it.
Yeah, it's these holidays really interrupt things, and it changes your habits and your patterns, and it can be uh, very trying to overcome because there's always things that you're forgetting, and uh, it's just hard to keep up, especially with the strange, times for games, strange days. There's no Monday Night Football next week. We've got Saturday football. It's the bowls. We don't know when those are starting. Sometimes it's 8 a.m. here. It just never stops.
Yeah, it's a challenging time period. We just got to stick to the process that we normally stick to and move on from there. If it means a reduction of plays, it's not a big deal. We just take it one game at a time, one day at a time.
I am trying to chase down some updated charts of the playoff situation.
We know we still have some three-way ties going on, NFC and AFC South, and we're getting down to the wire now. Let me tell you one team I was the most impressed with last week, even though I bet against them, and that was the Seattle Seahawks. They were not in a great situation last week. The line, for whatever reason, was mostly 3.5 and some threes at game time. The 3.5 was nice. I was extremely impressed that Geno Smith and Seattle came back and won that game. I think it's a testament for, even though things didn't look good for them, they found a way to win. Seattle is still in the playoff picture. They'll lose tiebreakers to the Rams, but they play all 60 minutes, and I was very impressed with their performance.
The Rams really looked pretty darn strong. Stafford was just spot on. I mean, it was just amazing. And I don't think, the Saints blew 3 4th-down conversions. And while they looked pathetic, somehow they weren't as pathetic as I think that they kind of looked. It was just kind of exasperating. I think the Rams had a way of making them look bad at the same time, because the Saints were seemingly hopeless, but they moved the ball the whole game. And I think some of the stuff that Stafford was doing was just unbelievable. I mean, did you watch any of that? Did you see where the ball placement was and the pressure he was under? And he was just, threading needles.
I saw some highlights of the game. It's been a busy week, so the watching has been limited. But I will say this. I think we all remember how good Stafford was when he was healthy, and he's showing us this right now. And if we're going to talk about a wide open Coach of the Year race, what about Sean McVay entering the minefield in terms of how many people could potentially get some votes for Coach of the Year? Because the Rams look really, really good. Their defense against the pass is good. And when Stafford is threading the needle, like you said, it's a different offense. New Orleans found several ways to shoot themselves in the foot. We know about their coaching staff and everything like that. They're still mathematically alive in the playoffs. because of the division that they're in. And they're probably going to enter in a couple of good situations this week. But this is all about what the Rams accomplished.
We expected them to make a run, but I didn't think either one of us thought that they were going to make this strong of a run. Just amazing to think that most everybody, I mean, I think we were the most optimistic on the Rams of anybody, but we certainly didn't expect to see them do what they've done.
No, I expected more close losses than wins just because, yes, the roster is very young and they're getting it together, and they've shown that they've improved in a lot of areas week after week after week. And that was both surprising and unsurprising to me because I kind of had the feeling they would improve during the year, but I didn't necessarily think that that would translate into potential playoff entry.
I'm just so sick and tired of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's been like 2 or 3 years in a row where they pull the same crap. I mean, it's unbelievable how some of these teams just every single time you expect anything from that team, they are no show, and every time you leave them for dead. I mean, they look like world champions somehow. And it's not just Pittsburgh, but it's just incredulous how that team is just up and down.
Yeah, I don't think the article's up and running yet, but the Wager Talk article this week, I talked about Pittsburgh and Atlanta changing quarterbacks. And it's not just that Mason Rudolph was playing and that Taylor Heineke was playing. It's that they showed early trust in these guys. They let Mason Rudolph throw downfield. They didn't let Mitchell Trubisky throw downfield. They let Taylor Heineke throw 33 passes. Atlanta doesn't let anybody throw 33 passes. So I think they finally decided that, hey, we're going to let these guys loose and see what they could do. And both teams benefited from it.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to load all the stuff I had loaded before the computer went south on me earlier. The Bills and the Chargers was a little tighter than I thought, but about what I expected. Flat spot for the Bills, and just the middle finger. A lot of people said that Staley was liked by the players, but when those changes happen, they still want to show some pride. They know that the eyes are going to be on them, and they were humiliated. So that was pretty much what I expected, as scary as it was to bet them.
Yeah, I left that game alone. I don't have a regret on it, but I think I was a little late to the party. It wasn't so much that I thought the Chargers would have a bump, but double digits on the road for a Buffalo team that, yes, they look good when they're not passing the ball and forcing it into coverage. But do we really think this year's version of the Buffalo Bills should have been a double-digit favorite? So maybe I let that one get away. I think Buffalo is capable of better, but we can't pretend now that we're at week 17 that Buffalo is anywhere near where they've been a couple of years ago.
Well, Cook's over 1,000 yards rushing. He's got some of the best stats in the league for the running backs. So they're very fortunate to not have to lean on Allen as much. Getting back to that Rams, I kind of glossed over that. Who is the DC over there?
I can't remember if he has former Tampa Bay ties. Is it Morris? I might be making a name up. I'm sure one of our great listeners here, Bertie or Hector or Russell, can look it up, or maybe they know offhand. I want to say it's Morris.
Yeah, I mean, it is Morris. Hector says. I mentioned it quickly last week. Somebody had sent me detailed lists of, Coach of the Year candidates. And I said, well, you're leaving out somebody. And when he couldn't even come up with the person he was leaving out, and it was McVay. So I didn't put a dime on him. So I feel I don't think he can get it. But for the life of me, I don't understand why Campbell was at the top of the list, as of before these games started this past week. Just never made sense. to me. So he's done an okay job, but some of the, what about Stefanski? I mean, my gosh, Baltimore still can't shake Cleveland.
Yeah, I have no investment in these Coach of the Year or MVP awards, but I think this year is fascinating because every week there's a different pecking order. I am included in the group of people who thought D'Amico Ryans was going to be an odds-on favorite, but after the last couple of weeks, admittingly without their fine rookie quarterback Stroud, but there could be as many as 6, 7, 8 Coach of the Year candidates right now, and it may change again this coming week. We saw the MVP race change before our eyes last night. So why can't the Coach of the Year race be the same way?
Yeah, there was a giant vacuum of energy. This, I think, a lot of people were holding Purdy tickets, and that game could have gone differently if San Francisco had held on and McCaffrey had stayed going. That would have been interesting because McCaffrey was the only one doing anything for San Fran. He broke off a couple of long runs, including that touchdown, and that defense was just too swarming on McCaffrey. And while he had a great game, Jackson certainly stood out as the best player on the field that night for sure. And I'm holding a small Lamar ticket, but I feel my McCaffrey ticket's in a little bit of trouble unless Jackson has a letdown. And I'm not rooting for Jackson to have a letdown. Purdy style.
I saw some tweets last night that said, I think is it Jeff Vogel that writes, and he's a very good writer. He tweets out a lot on various NFL topics. And he was saying that if you have a lot of MVP candidates or Coach of the Year candidates, whatever the market may be, you're basically hedging against yourself. And unless you're getting really, really long odds, you're not going to make a big profit out of all of this. So it's probably at this point too late to start moving around and chasing around on these markets. If you have some strong positions, good luck, because it could change. Lamar Jackson, if they win out, I think it's Lamar Jackson's award. But that's a big if. I know Baltimore plays Miami this week. I cannot remember. I will look it up for you right now. Baltimore plays Pittsburgh. They host Pittsburgh the last week. Normally, that's an easy spot, home to Pittsburgh. It's never an easy spot, Baltimore and Pittsburgh games. It's a slugfest. But this Miami game is going to be interesting. So if you're holding Lamar tickets, you're not home free yet.
I did notice the comeback player of the year market is moving off of Hamlin. Stafford was up there last time I checked. Didn't really think he was coming back from anything, but I guess you could consider him. Baker's certainly up there. I think Stafford and Baker were the 1 and 2 in that market behind Hamlin.
I'm curious for that market whether or not the people who vote on comeback player of the year use their own criteria or stick to what's written as far as what is the criteria for comeback player of the year. I think it's another one of those subjective feelings that each voter has to deal with.
So Stefanski's up to the leader in Coach of the Year. Campbell's down to second. And it's a long third back to Steichen and McDaniel for third and fourth at this point.
Cleveland has the Jets this week and at Cincinnati next week. So if you think Cleveland goes 2-0, maybe there was some value in him, but I'm going to be fascinated by how it shakes out.
Let's see what Lamar minus 164 at Circa. McCaffrey second at 375, and Purdy up to 675.
Yeah, what a change.
Well, it seems about right. But, I mentioned, I shared with many people that the McCaffrey market would be below 5-1 this week. And I was right. So, but I think he's got a tough road here because I think Jackson just did an amazing job last night. Kudos to him. But what I did tweet out is, hold on. They're already talking about Baltimore, going to the Super Bowl and how good they are. They're the best team in the NFL. They haven't even won their division yet. And we know, Harbaugh made mistakes again last night coaching.
Mhm.
He will make mistakes in game every game. You have to dock him 1 point off of whatever the metric model is, because he's going to cost them on average 1 point per game, in my opinion. Why he's kicking a field goal from the 1.5 yard line, I don't know. I mean, that wasn't the only mistake he made, but all year long, we've come up periodically with, what did Harbaugh do wrong this week? And that's the thing you have to worry about with him. So until Baltimore has that divisional title completely in hand, you can't even count on them for the division. Cleveland has 2 games they can win out with. And Miami's Miami's got the potential to go in there and win. And you got a short week with Baltimore on top of it. A little dicey.
The AFC playoff picture is one where who's ever in it, it's going to be tough. And that everybody knows, and Lamar knows this more than anybody. It's what he does in the playoffs that's going to define his 2023 season. 2023, 2024. So it's a tough road in the AFC. I do think that Baltimore and San Francisco, well, according to my power ratings and according to the eye test, those are the best 2 teams right now. That doesn't mean that the best 2 teams always get to the Super Bowl. But if Baltimore can have that first round bye, at least it's only 2 games. San Francisco, if they still get that first round bye, which they're the best team, they're still likely to get that first round bye. It means that they're going to play a quote unquote easier opponent in that first playoff game that they have to play. It might be a 1-game season for San Francisco, but even with the first round seed, even with the first round bye in the AFC, it's a 2-game season because there are no easy playoff games in the AFC.
Well, I guess if you don't like your Ravens ticket, the division, yes or no, is 5,000 and plus 1950. Last week, Cleveland was only plus 1,100. They're in the exact same shape they were last week, just 2 fewer games left.
That is correct.
That seems like a big jump.
The season's shortening.
Oh, Saints are Buccaneers are minus 750 in their division.
Really? Okay. What if they lose this week?
Uh,
I mean, they're hosting New Orleans. It's
Saints are. They go to Tampa and then Atlanta. Saints win this week. They've got a lot of hope. Atlanta is at Chicago. Atlanta finishes with 2 road games.
Yeah. I understand Tampa being favored. I think 750 is high.
Tampa Bay at home against New Orleans and at Carolina. That's tough. Anything can go wrong.
Yeah.
I think the Saints are drawing live at plus 740.
Yeah. Have not done a lot of work for this week, but one of the things Tampa Bay has done, one of the things Baker Mayfield has done, especially recently, is limit his turnovers. And we all know if you could predict turnovers in advance, you'd be rich. So you can't really predict that, but you can look at turnover margins and say, how was it achieved? Whether or not it's a fake number, that kind of thing. At equal turnovers in this particular game, I do give the Saints a chance to upend Tampa.
Division. Well, Tampa's 3, boy, the tiebreakers on these games are a little rough. Or on these teams. Do you think I've got to imagine Tampa's got a tiebreaker over New Orleans?
Yeah, I haven't checked that completely, but you're probably right on that.
Because otherwise that's insanity. Oh, you can get plus 10,000 on the Raiders.
To make the playoff
The
or to
Raiders
win
are
the
still alive
division?
for the division.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on the Raiders KC because I think I talked about it a lot last week in terms of why the Raiders were the live side that particular week. People could probably figure that out from the way I was talking. But beyond that, Antonio Pierce has installed such a defensive spirit in this team that you look at this team and you have to think that you have to earn your yards no matter what team you are against this Raider defense.
Yeah, I had lunch with Mike Pritchard um, before the season, and I specifically asked him about the Raiders uh, because he had said that they would do well this year, and I think I mentioned it before. He's on track. They've got that defense is rough on the corners. I mean, every single play they were putting Mahomes on his heels. They're just tough. They've got a solid defense, and they've got offensive tools also. They've got a good foundation for a team. I don't know where their money's sitting, but I think that they're a team that is closer to uh, that is by no means. We were talking about tearing them apart early in the season. I wouldn't tear that team apart.
Yeah, I think Pierce is going to know who plays hard for them and who doesn't play hard for them. And whatever Josh McDaniels did, he put his quarterbacks and other people in harm's way. Here's another one where the turnover ratio has really flipped because even though it's a short career for Antonio Pierce, he spent time at Arizona State. He didn't spend as much time coaching in the NFL. It may be a short career, but fundamentally, they're a different team with him, even in the short period of time, as opposed to when Josh McDaniels was the coach.
Where do you think that comes from? Just like a Campbell-esque type of player enthusiasm and able to relate.
I'm not sure I mean, he's stoic on the sidelines. I think it's more of a D'Amico Ryans comparison where he just teaches them what to do and he leads by example in his body language and his conversation rather than the noise. I don't think Pierce, maybe he's a demonstrative guy, but I haven't seen it. I just think people respect him for the way he played the game, much like D'Amico Ryans, the way he played the game when he was in the linebacker position, and it's rubbing off on the players.
Indianapolis was a real letdown last week. I don't know what the deal was there. Um, I haven't had been able to look back at that game. Have you looked at all? Was that more of Atlanta good, Indianapolis bad, or was it a combination of both? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, the two takeaways I have, and I lost that live bet. We had that live bet on Tuesday. They got to 39. They didn't get there. The two takeaways were, again, talking about Heineke and their more trust in the passing game, that Atlanta actually tried to pass the ball 33 times. But the other issue was they missed Pittman, their wide receiver. And I have a feeling that Minshew and company, they weren't as respected in terms of the pass without their number one wide receiver. And I'm sure I factored in some account for that. We found out that information, I think, during the Inside Butch show on Friday. So the over-under bet was already in at that particular time, and then the line moved and so on. But I think they missed Pittman at wide receiver more than I anticipated.
Yeah, but they played the whole game against Pittsburgh without Pittman, and they seemed to do just fine.
That's true, but Pittsburgh played with Mitchell Trubisky, not Mason Rudolph. They didn't have that week to really get ready for that game. I think that was a shorter week game. Pittsburgh was a different team in that particular case. And Atlanta changed things up on them. It was a dud by Indy, but it's a reminder that Indy's schedule hasn't been that great. And these teams, what Indy's record is 8-7, I believe. That's what an 8-7 team does. They lose some, they win some. It's just not a great. You can't ask some of these teams to be great week in and week out because they have enough losses to tell us that they're a flawed team.
Well, Atlanta came to life again. Panthers kept it awfully interesting. Packers have an interesting game at Minnesota for the Sunday night game, which is the last game of the week.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I don't really like Green Bay's situation coming into this game. I could have got by. I did end up with a small play on Minnesota against Detroit. I did end up pulling the trigger at +3. Perhaps if Mullins had thrown 3 interceptions instead of 4 interceptions, I would be sitting with a winning ticket. But you can't program a guy to throw 4 interceptions. You certainly couldn't program Purdy to throw 4 of his own and the team 5 in the San Francisco game. Minnesota, again, they dug their own grave. Every time they get careless with the ball, they just flat out lose.
Well, and somebody posted Hawkinson, I guess, is out. So
yeah, and he left that game during the game, and that was, they lost by 6. If you take the turnovers away, if you take even one of the turnovers away, Minnesota has a 50-50 chance of winning that game last week.
That is going to hurt them. They have faded rapidly, but they're still alive. Just 2 tough games against Green Bay and Detroit.
Yeah.
Seattle, unfortunately, looks to be in decent shape.
So we know playoffs. They play Pittsburgh this week. Seattle's an interesting case. Let's talk about them. They play Pittsburgh this week. They're at Arizona the next week. And Arizona's going to try. But still, Seattle, well, we talked about this when the Steelers had the easy schedule. Other teams have the easy schedule. Having the easier schedule like Seattle does now doesn't mean that they're going to be at peak.
Oh, I just have to interrupt this. This is ridiculous. We've talked how many times about how Dallas and Miami haven't beaten anybody or barely anybody. The Ravens have 7 wins by 14 or more points, and all of those opponents are above 500.
Yeah, big difference there.
That's amazing. Cleveland, I think Houston with Stroud back in the saddle this week. Hopefully, I think they'll step back into gear. What do you think there?
My feeling is the way Tennessee lost that game at the end to Seattle, I think they're going to go through the motions. I want no part of Tennessee. Whether I take Houston or not, chances are I'll ignore the game. But I really want no part of Tennessee right now. There's going to be tremendous roster changes. We don't even know if their coach is going to survive this. The team's got to be discouraged by how that game ended last week. What are they playing for in this road game?
Well, exactly. So I think that line's short. I'm looking at last week's, right?
Yeah, Hector says Jets, Panthers, Cardinals seem like teams that won't give up despite elimination. I believe that to be the case, especially with the Jets off the win, which kept them motivated. So I think you hit the nail on the head, Hector. If you think that you have a good team going against a bad team, know that these teams are trying.
Well, we did have the over. I did place a Jets over 6.5 on the show. So if they could just win one of these 2 games, that'll hit.
And it's very possible the last week is the team that they just can't get over the hump against, and that's New England.
Yeah.
They're going to want nothing more than to do that. And I think they're going to come in week 18 with more motivation than New England does, especially if New England takes a loss, any kind of a loss against Buffalo in this particular game. I think the Jets and remember this again, the Jets will have extra time. The Jets will have 3 days extra to prepare for it. I understand they're not going anywhere, but because they play New England, I think they care.
Yeah, that could be pretty ugly there in New England. It certainly looks like it's Belichick's last game, and that's going to be a completely different team, you would think. And I think the players know it, and I'm not sure if I think the mystique of people wanting to play in New England is going to be gone. Who wants to play in that weather if there's not a Belichick there coaching, and it's a rebuild. So, there's only so many auditions to stay that are going to be important to the players. And it doesn't seem like you've ever heard the players, really go to bat for Belichick. And, there's just no connection there. What do you think?
There's a roster turnover that we haven't seen in a while. A lot of the veterans were gone before this year. You have their special team player, Slater. I think he's been there 18 years or something like that. You have a handful of guys who have been there with Belichick for more than 5 years, but the roster is turning over right now. So the loyalty was already changing there. Belichick likes to get rid of some of the players before, as they're getting ready for the downhill. So, and there were the McCourty brothers are both retired now, and some of the guys he brought in got hurt, and the whole kicking game has been turning over. So it's just a different roster right now. So there's not as much loyalty, and they're building. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. Zappy looks good one week, doesn't look good the next. I don't think they have a playoff caliber quarterback on the roster. So whoever it's there, whether it's Belichick or somebody we don't know about, there's some serious roster holes on this team. Serious.
No doubt about it. It's going to be interesting. It's probably sad times for Pats fans, which there are a lot of, because the future doesn't look bright. And being a Piston fan, watching that team go down the drain and the Wings go down the drain, it's not fun when your team goes down the drain after a lot of success. So,
sticking with that division for a second, we talk about the Jets trying. The Jets defense has quietly risen to a very high mark on my ratings. So, if there's going to be a team to make noise next year, it's not right now, roster wise, it's not New England. It might be more the Jets.
Well, it was interesting because they basically confirmed that Salah will be back. And that's a good move under the circumstances, because if you put it in a new coach, with what's going on and Aaron Rodgers there and all this, I think it would be really, really goofy, more goofy than it already is. And I agree with you, because we made comments about 5-6 weeks ago that, hey, this Jets team was known for their defense, but look how low they are now. But now they're all the way back up to, I think, 6th. I have them. Where do you have them?
Yeah, I was wondering where you did, because I think quite quietly they have moved up. You've seen them shore up. I mean, they had a tremendous defense against the pass against Washington. It's not that like Sam Howell was a terrible percentage passer, but they completely stymied Washington's pass offense to the point where they took Howell out of the game. I know Hector said something, Washington, on the other hand, whether or not they were going to be trying or not. I mean, Washington's dead in the water now, and that game just confirmed it. You had two teams that had nothing to play for playoff wise, and the Jets looked like the far more spirited and focused team.
I'm just looking at my last 5 weeks rankings, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you want to round into form this time of year.
Jacksonville, they get a couple key cogs back, but this week, I believe. But boy, Um, Trevor looked pretty. I'm not sure how good this guy is. I mean, he's getting hurt every week, and even when he's in, he's not looking all that great. Um, I don't know what you do if you're holding a Jacksonville division ticket at this point.
Yeah, I'm holding one.
I'm not sure that they can go 2-0 in these final two games.
But they got schooled by Tampa. You've heard me mention it's a function of their draft. I think they have the worst GM in the business. They had a chance to make this team great, and they sacrificed 7 picks that did not get draft eligible ratings on my board last year. And it shows because they have 2 or 3 really good defensive players, but the starting 11 should be better than it is. They have less talent than they should have based on where they've drafted and how many players they've drafted the last 2 years. So I think that's hurt them defensively. Offensively, I think Trevor Lawrence needed a week off, never got that week off, and he's been completely out of rhythm. And if you look at their run game, it's disappeared. And what did I write down? I was going to mention it. I do not believe they had a lot of carries last week. They've got to get their run game going. They have to reset, much like Buffalo reset. I think Jacksonville needs to reset, and it better happen right now.
They don't have the division odds up at Circa at the moment.
Yeah, I would say of Jacksonville. I have a feeling for that division, they're waiting on Stroud news before they put the division odds up.
Maybe they're waiting for Stroud's information.
Yeah.
Cowboys, Dolphins. I guess that's about what we expected. It all boils. I think it's Miami season is going to be very interesting. Do they have to win this week?
Yeah, if they lose and Baltimore wins, oh no, they're playing Baltimore. And if they lose and Buffalo wins, they could lose the division, I believe.
Well, Baltimore can lose the division, and Miami can lose the division. What's the Bills 10? Yeah, okay, but I think it all boils down to the head-to-head with Buffalo.
Right, and Buffalo beat them the first time, so if they beat them again, they have it.
Right, so
yeah, so they're not out of the woods at all. You could see Buffalo win the division. It's going to be a fascinating Week 18 game, which would probably be the last game of the year. They would schedule that one as the final game, and that game is at Miami.
Yep, but Miami does. Yeah, I mean, Miami does not have to win this for the division, just for the number 1 seed if they're chasing that.
That's true, and obviously they would own the tiebreaker against Baltimore if they won this game because they're playing each other.
Right.
Fascinating schedule down the stretch, huh?
It's all pre-orchestrated.
Well, no, they got lucky. That's what I think.
Boy, Denver looked bad. That knocked out a lot of Survivor people, and just shocked that they could not win the game at home. I mean, for gosh sakes.
Yeah, I was a little hard on people for taking Denver. I mean, you're talking about Russell Wilson -7 or at game time -7.5. That was I said, I have to do it. You're giving me 7.5 points. And Denver, we talked about this, when they do not have turnover ratio success, they have flaws. They do not defend the run that well. They've gotten a little bit better against the pass, but they're not even league average against the pass. Do you trust Russell Wilson? Looked like he was running around in circles at times.
There's some divisional odds there. Jacksonville's still -170.
Oh, I see them. Well, yeah, that's pretty scary. I mean, I apparently have value with my ticket, but there is, again, it's a 3-team race. You've heard me talk. I'd rather have it be a 2-team race, but there is a hedge possibility in that. I'm looking up Miami's record at home against Buffalo. They won as a dog last year. They got killed as a dog the year before. They covered as a dog. The last time Miami was a home favorite was 2018. So they haven't been a home favorite very much. It'll make for a very interesting game if everything's on the line, whether or not at that point, Baltimore, if Miami lost this week, Baltimore would be the number 1 seed. So Miami would be playing for either the number 2 seed or the number 5 or 6 seed at that point.
The Chiefs obviously have some huge problems.
Where do you have them rated right now? Because this is the first time in 5 years they are not in my top 5.
I say they are not in my top 5 either.
Yeah, it's the very first time. Yeah, they are not there. There's a gap between 5 and 6, so they are not in my top 5.
Wow.
Really, first time in a long time I can say that. Again, I don't think it's necessary. I know they're not as good as last year, but I think the NFL dealt them such a cruel blow by putting all these rest differentials in their way. For the Raiders to have 10 days to prepare with that defense and liking that interim coach so much, it was going to be hard on Mahomes to stretch the field, and he could not stretch the field.
It's funny. I look and Hector just beat me to the punch, but I thought about it before I saw it. These home teams on Christmas Eve. We should look up that record over the last 5-6 years and see if it's always like this. Because being on the road when you're traveling for holidays, you're focused. You don't have the family distractions and such that the home team players have with family visiting and meals and managing girlfriends and wives and all that sort of thing. So
maybe I think it's a function of your head coach then. How strong a role model, how strong a force, how much do you believe in your head coach? Because that person has to bring the message home to the players that we're home, but this is a business trip, even though we're home.
I mean, I got to say, I don't believe, let's see if I made a note on this. There was not a pass completion made in the second, third, or fourth quarters by the Raiders. Imagine that. They didn't score an offensive touchdown the entire game. It just is such a strange loss for Kansas City, but it's the same thing. These guys keep dropping these balls, and I'm just looking at it, and it just seems I don't watch a lot of football, but every time I turn on a Kansas City game, these guys are dropping balls that are in their hands, and it's even worse with Baltimore. I mean, geez, last night, how many in and out of how many hands just in the first quarter alone was just incredulous with Baltimore.
I did see some of that game. I wasn't paying too much attention to the drops or the not drops. I was just kind of looking to see what defenses, what kind of schemes Baltimore was going to run on San Francisco. And I have a feeling their game plan was make Purdy throw the ball. McCaffrey had over 100 rush yards. He had a fine yards per carry average. In the NFL, you usually don't get beat by the run game. You get beat unless it's just a power run, time of possession thing. But if you're a finesse team like San Francisco, at least I believe they're a finesse team in many ways, you don't want them to beat you with Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Kittle running crazy. And Kittle did run crazy for a while. But Baltimore does give up big plays. They take some risk, but they really wanted to bait Purdy. And like it or not, and I think Purdy's a fine player. Just because he's probably not going to win the MVP doesn't mean he's a terrible player. He's a top 5 player in the NFL. So he's fine, but we have to remember that his sample size is a year and a half in the NFL. And Baltimore and their defense and the amount of strong players they have defensively, that experience in the room on the defensive side of the ball is a factor against young quarterbacks.
I couldn't believe how small McCaffrey looked sometimes when he had that ball against that Baltimore defense. They would come on him, and McCaffrey does a pretty good job of bowling over people.
Yeah.
Quite regularly. And boy, it was just like him walking into a brick wall so many times. I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah. When he has space, you could see his vision. The elite running backs, they have this vision that just can't be taught.
Well, onward to this week. The Browns at home. DTR is done for the season. They've re-signed PJ, and he's back to back up Flacco. I think we're starting to see maybe we're seeing the same thing we see in running backs every year, where we talk about, hey, look for backup running backs to look really, really good when they get a chance to play in the later weeks of the seasons, the latter weeks of the season, because they're rested more. I mean, maybe Flacco, is just fresh and alert, and he, hasn't been beat to crap all season. It just, I don't know how so many teams wouldn't even give this guy a chance, and there's still this much left in him. I mean, can the entire league be wrong? I mean, seemingly he's in this spot by complete and utter default. I mean, he's the last chick in the bar at 3 a.m., right?
Well, he's calm, cool, and collected, and he brings a wealth of experience, and he hasn't been used much the last few years, so his body is fresh. But I'm the contrarian here. I can't stand it that people are hyping him up after 7 interceptions in 4 games. He's on pace to throw 30 interceptions if he played 17 games. That's a problem for me.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's, you get the good with the bad. It's I think he's not useless is my only point. I'm not tooting his horn for comeback player of the year or anything more than he's doing an adequate job at the very least. And you have somebody with, that's been to Super Bowls, that, has the experience and should be able to tutor young players. I'm just surprised every team just left him off the roster entirely.
He's that unique individual that can cost you a game in the third quarter and come back and win it in the fourth.
Yeah. Basically dig your own hole.
Yeah.
He's
then
like
you look good.
He's like the fireman that lights the fires and puts them
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah. That just kind of comes to mind for me right now.
So the Jets Browns, that's just going to be an ugly event, I would imagine, wouldn't you?
Short week. Jets off an emotional win. Cleveland Cleveland's going to the playoffs, still has a chance in the division. I think you're going to have some sloppy play. I don't think it's going to be clean and crisp.
Lions Cowboys. Now that's awfully interesting.
Yeah. How much do you think? I understand the Lions are still in the running for the number 1 seed, but they lose all tiebreakers. Honestly, how much do you think there'll be at least some letdown this week after winning that elusive division title?
Well, I don't understand. I'm positive that I read that if the Lions won out, that they had a tiebreaker over Philadelphia, but I guess that's not the case. Or maybe it was depending on other teams losing, changing conference records, or some obscure type strength of schedule variance. I'm not sure there, but from what I saw today, if they win out, they don't necessarily get that number 2 seed. They still only have like an 11% or 12% chance of getting the number 1 seed. So that's, not, I don't think that's strong enough for them. And Campbell, I think you probably touched on something, because Campbell actually came out today and made a comment on that. He volunteered to comment on that, as far as I understand. He wasn't answering a question, and he said, the thing we have to worry about is complacency after winning the divisional title. We don't want to see any of that. So I don't think he
Yeah.
would have said that if he hadn't been seeing some things that concerned him about that.
Well, you knew that they were going to celebrate immediately after the win. This game is interesting. The Week 18 game, I'm already formulating a strategy for Week 18. I would be surprised if they're not scoreboard watching Week 18 and Detroit doesn't play any of their starters in the second half, Week 18. Just keep that in mind. Just put it in the back of everybody's mind for next week.
Yeah, that's not going to surprise me at all either. They can. That could be either Teddy Bridgewater's last NFL appearance, or they can bring in their drafted quarterback from this previous draft, Hooker, and see if he has anything. At
Or
least
both.
at least get him some action.
Yeah, that should be fun.
But no, I don't see a reason in the world for them to. I mean, Philadelphia is not going to lose to the Giants, I don't think, again.
No, I think Hector hit it exactly. I think Dallas has a situation that's favorable based on the mindsets. And I think the line, the odds on this game have already built that in.
On the Dallas this week?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This line belongs at 4, 3.5.
Yeah. I would make it 4.5. Normally, I slid it up to 5 because I thought that it's worth an extra half a point. Vegas said, no, it's worth a little bit more than that because we have a feeling on this game.
Well, the Dallas has scored 30 points combined over the last 2 road games, but they believe they're scoring over 30 on average at home. So,
one more point about Detroit. 4th road game in the last 5 weeks.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I thought I'd share.
And Washington has played 3 extra road games. So that's crucial this week to know that. It's not really crucial.
Yeah. I didn't even know Washington was playing.
It just one of those oddities.
Yeah, because they end the season back-to-back home games in front of that monstrous crowd that's going to be cheering them on.
Brother. Yeah, it's a shame that the effort is going to be an issue with the Lions, but I have a funny feeling that I don't know. I think they'd love to stick it to Dallas. I really do. I'm going to be looking closely at that game. I'm going to kind of read the tea leaves on what comes out of Detroit media this week to see what they're thinking, because don't forget that this is the team that was out of the playoffs and went in and beat the crap out of Green Bay Week 18 last year. So when they were least expected, and it was funny because the line moved in Green Bay's favor heavily. And I said, not so fast. I promise you the Lions are going to go in there and they're going to make their best effort, and I think they're going to win the game. And sure enough, that's what happened. I don't know what's going to happen here yet.
It's really an indictment of those 8-7, 9-7, 8-8 teams that need to win. They're flawed. And Green Bay, much like Denver this past week and other teams we're going to see in the NFC and AFC South, they're not good enough to phone in a game and win regardless of their opponent.
So Baltimore hosting a crucial morning game or early game against the Dolphins.
Yeah. My initial thought on this game, and we're just doing this on the fly because I have so much more work to be done on the NFL, is that Miami has a chance to establish the run in this game. We talk a lot about Tua and opening it up. Waddle got hurt. Tyreek Hill wasn't 100%. But there's an opportunity to run on Baltimore, especially on a short week for Baltimore. I have a feeling this game hinges on whether Miami establishes the run, which could be dead wrong, and I might change my opinion. But right now, I think it would behoove them to establish the run.
This line's a little higher than I expected. Doesn't 4 seem high?
Yeah, I couldn't decide between 3 and 3.5, so four is high.
Uh, do, 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 do. New England Buffalo next. Atlanta Chicago. The Bears a 3-point favorite.
Let me see if I have anything I want to share on those two games. 6.11. I'll tell you one thing. I was surprised Atlanta got to Indy and Minshew 6 times last week in terms of sacks. That's a new thing for Atlanta, actually rushing the quarterback. So it makes it interesting if they can get to Justin Fields.
Didn't they have like 18 sacks last year or something?
Yeah, they had one of the lowest totals ever, almost one, just over 1 per game. They've been league low the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's why I keep asking them to get a pass rusher. They're doing it by committee. They don't have a large. Their leading sacker has 5.5 and 6 sacks, which is way down in the league for having a leading sacker be that low. They have 36 sacks now, which is like a C+ rating. This is their best in so many years. Very interesting because they don't really have a go-to pass rush scheme, but somehow they got through against Indianapolis last week. That was a surprising number to me.
So the Bears, are they out of it 100%?
Not out of it 100%. No.
I need them to lose, I think. Jesus.
It's possible. I mean, I would say my August notes said this, and I write these notes in August and I refer to them when the game goes on. Which defense is playing better? And if you ask me right now, Atlanta's defense is playing better.
Oh, boy. What is my number? Oh, okay. I couldn't remember whether I had a very substantial bet under 6.5 or 8.5. Luckily, it's under 8.5. So started to panic there for a bit. I did a limit bet at Circa, and I couldn't remember whether it was under 6.5 or 8.5.
You had to weigh juice at 8.5, I'm sure.
Oh, well, yeah, of course I did. So
yeah,
worth every penny now since it's locked and loaded now. What do you think I'm hearing that they want. I thought that they have enough to really build on there, and then I heard some commentary on a couple of shows where they're talking about, the Bears are still a teardown. What do you think the mental frame of mind is with this team at this point?
I'd fire their GM because he's drastically killed them in terms of their offensive line. He's drafted the wrong people. What he does well is secure draft picks. What he doesn't do well is draft responsibly when he has those picks. But they're going to have 2 of the top 5 or 6 picks. So it's not necessarily tear down. They have a chance to really build that roster right away because of the trade they made with Carolina. Just hope they do better on the draft. That's all.
Yeah, it looks like this Trevor Lawrence is. I bet you they just signed Barkley, so. You got to imagine Lawrence, that's a Lawrence issue.
I don't understand why teams, when they had a chance week 11, 12, 13, whatever it is, to sit him 1 week, just tell him we're taking away your locker and sit him 1 week to get him right, why they didn't do that. And I think that there's nagging injuries and that's hurting them. Let's skip down to Rams Giants. What do you make of the Giants right now?
The same thing they pulled last year where they show up late in the season when you think they're not going to.
Who do you start at quarterback this week?
Between
DeVito and Tyrod Taylor.
You start Tyrod.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think DeVito was borrowing time in the NFL, so I'd much rather have Tyrod Taylor. There's going to be a problem if the Rams get their pass rush going, and the Rams again, they get the benefit in this game. They have the 3 extra days off, and I think it's going to be tough for the New York Giants to pass the ball in this game. This has to be a Barkley game for the Giants, and Barkley occasionally has done some good things now that he's even further removed from injury. But this has to be a Barkley game for the Giants to be relevant.
I thought the line movement on the Rams game was a little odd.
I haven't seen the movement. I know it's a roughly 6 is what I saw.
Well, it was kind of 6.5, looking like it might hit 7, and now it's like 5.5, 6.
Yeah, I said it at 7.
It just seems low.
Yeah, I think we're not giving the Rams enough defensive credit. And part of power ratings to me is you do the defensive stuff too. What did you learn from Philly last week? Last night. They had a big lead, 20-3. They gave up the pick 6 to make it 20-10. Then, when it looked like they were going to pull away, they allowed an extra touchdown. They allowed another extra touchdown. What do you take away from Philly where they are? Not just Hurts, but defensively, where are they?
I think that the Lions would beat them if the Lions get a home playoff game against the Eagles. So I think I think that they've got weakness. I think that I just think that they have problems. I think they're vulnerable, don't you?
Yeah. So the Super Bowl contestants last year are not the same teams. Philly, we thought they squeaked by and they won a few games early, and we said they're going to get better. They're going to get better, but they never really did get better. They just continue to squeak by. There is something missing right now. Even Swift hasn't been running with the same authority, or maybe they're not giving him enough carries. They have these 2 really good wide receivers. Something's missing, but I really think something's missing defensively from this team. They should be better defensively than they are.
Who have they stopped? Everybody runs up and down the field on them.
Well, when you trust the run game against Philly, it tends to work, but teams tend to deviate from the run game. But teams that know them know that you could do a little bit of running on them. I think Arizona is going to start off committed to the run. And Arizona tried against Chicago last week, but Arizona, they're just not a complete team whatsoever.
Holy cow, where do you have Philadelphia's defense rated?
I don't have I'm going to have to work off last week's numbers because I haven't tabulated them. I would probably say I would have Philly's defense like 16, 17.
I have them lower than that. That'll tell you there's no way a team with that kind of defense is going anywhere.
I mean, you're probably talking about a top 5 to 8 defense, if not better, the last 2 or 3 years. And now, I don't know exactly where my ratings are, but if 16th is the highest I have them, they've got problems.
Yeah, they're not sniffing 16th on mine.
Do you want to touch any more on New Orleans, Tampa?
Oh, Raiders, Colts, actually. What do you expect there?
Raiders, Colts. At first glance, I have a lot of conflict going on in this game. I'm not prepared to even talk about it much. The one thing I will say is that since Antonio Pierce has been coach, they have either been equal or plus in every single game in the turnover margin. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of our talk today, they're not turning the ball over. They're a different team. They're playing more fundamentally sound. And the Raiders, by definition, have never been a fundamentally sound team. And all of a sudden, they're playing more fundamentally sound.
Well, I think they want to keep their coach. I think they're all happy. It's And then I don't know what to make about the Colts no-show last week. Sure, Pittman was out, but they should get Moss and Pittman back this week, as far as I understand.
One surprising thing to me is I did not expect to see a line of Indy -3. Maybe I'm misjudging it. I haven't been exact on Indy all year, but it's a little bit higher than what I would have said it.
Um, Braden Smith, what's his deal? I don't even know. Do you know what his
Um,
status is?
I don't know, but he individually, just by himself, it doesn't change a metric for me.
Um, Panthers, Jaguars. I think there was a comment. I think Birdie made it. Carolina's playing hard, so if Trevor's not going to be in, that might be a problem for
Yeah, it's
Jackson.
another one of those games. Jacksonville will probably pull it out, but Carolina will test them. And if Jacksonville turns it over, if we find out that Lawrence is still not throwing with confidence, anything can happen.
We talked about the Rams and the Giants, Arizona and Philly. Arizona can be pesky or pesty.
Something like that. Is there back-to-back road games? They haven't had too many of those.
And New Orleans, Tampa Bay.
Yes, I don't have anything much to add. What would be some points you're watching for this game?
I don't think New Orleans has any health issues that they added last week. If anything, they get a little healthier. From what I know, I could be wrong. And Tampa Bay has been playing teams that have had some serious problems in the recent weeks. They've had a kind of a, if it was a horse, it's getting kind of a lucky trip with circumstance, and it's making them look better than they are. We've commented on them that been backing Tampa Bay for the most part, and they are the number one climber over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, I find this a tricky situation for them in this game.
I think it's tricky. And I think every time I think when you leave Baker for dead and he is getting disrespected, I think that's when you see the best uh, Baker. But now that he's starting to get some attention and some praise and some comeback player of the year talk, and I'm holding a Baker ticket, so I kind of hope that he does well. But I always kind of worry about him when he's depended upon, so to speak.
Mm. I think this will be a tougher test for Tampa defensively, their offense against New Orleans defense. I think the New Orleans defense, which is pretty good, will reset this week with the 10 days. It's a divisional game. I just would be worried about Tampa this week.
I agree. I'm not sure. We'll just have to see. We're not going to have Lattimore Thomas, but for the most part, they're okay. Otherwise, I think. How many games in a row has Tampa won?
Find that.
They're 4-1, and they're 4 games in a row.
4 in a row. Okay. Good stretch for them. I'd say skip San Francisco, Washington, and talk a little of Pittsburgh, Seattle. Now that Seattle's back in the playoff chase, and Pittsburgh too, loser of this game is probably out.
Well, what's Pittsburgh supposed to do? Lose? So they obviously will go in there and blow out Seattle.
Yeah.
With Mason Rudolph.
It's going to be interesting because I take a look at these double-digit turnover ratios and I look at Pittsburgh and I say, I don't think they automatically win the turnover battle against Seattle.
You know, I don't think I'm going to see any value in this one somehow.
Yeah, I set Seattle a little bit higher than the 3.5, but I'm probably going to sit it out.
Yeah, amazingly. I mean, I had Seattle rated way too high at some point this season, and Pittsburgh was so low it was ridiculous. But I still have just a leaning on the value toward Pittsburgh somehow, and I just find that like bizarre.
If Pickett is healthy and if Rudolph struggles early, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Pickett in the game. Birdie's mentioning that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Too early on that one, but either way, I don't see huge value at this point.
Okay.
I think Kansas City finds a way to win this game. I think they have some real problems on offense. Uh, Mahomes screaming at them on the sideline again. That didn't get it done. And I mean, the bottom line is this is all Swift related. They're 3-5 since Swift came into the picture, and she's Yoko Swift.
I'm sure it's been pointed out before, but my wife pointed it out during the Philadelphia New York Giant game that Kelsey's brother, who's the center of the team for Philadelphia, so he lines up and he blocks for running back Swift. So you've got Kelsey and Swift really on the same team.
That's hilarious.
So I'm going to give her credit for that one. Again, we're talking about Kansas City. This is the 6th in a row time that a team has extra time to prepare. And it's 2 extra days. Kansas City, 6 days since they played on Monday. Cincinnati played on Saturday. So I don't know what the NFL had against Kansas City, but they're doing it again. But I do like Kansas City's defense. We saw it against the Raiders. I would think that they can shut down Cincinnati. So that doesn't mean I'm taking, there's no way I'm taking KC with 6 straight weeks where they have to shoulder the load. But I think there's a path to winning this game, and I think it comes from the defensive side of the ball.
Well, the power of the team is completely inverted from previous years. Kansas City, I have in the top 5 defensively, and not top 10 offensively. So, complete shift from previous years.
Yeah, they're not top 10 offensively.
Chargers Broncos.
Yeah. Well, technically Denver is still in the playoff picture, but it's like a 1% chance, and I might be high on that.
Yeah, it looks like they're the 12th man.
Yeah. It's unlikely. I mean, they could win out and end up 9th seed or 10th. I mean, they still couldn't be in the top 7. They need so much to happen. At times I say this Russell Wilson, Sean Payton thing can work. And there are other times I say that Sean Payton can't wait to remake the roster and have him off of it. Although I think there's a tremendous cap hit for next year.
I don't understand it. I mean, I watched that game and they looked so discombobulated, and there really was no excuse. They were moving offensively at one point. Russell had built up his confidence. I don't know what the hell happened there. Are there offensive line injuries? Because he never had time to throw the ball.
Nah, Russell's internal clock. He thinks he could just get away from pressure whenever he wants. New England, ever since they lost Matthew Judon, has slowed to a crawl in terms of rushing the passer. So that's why it was somewhat surprising that they got to Russell 5 times. But that's Russell. He's a big play waiting to happen, and he's a sack waiting to happen all at the same time.
Well, one thing for sure is I promise you I won't have $1 on the Denver this week.
Well, that's good for your pocket, I guess. Yeah, I want to see what the weather's going to be like in this game. You got the warm weather Chargers coming here. You got a couple of situations, the warm weather, dome team Atlanta going to Chicago, that kind of stuff. I think it's too many points for Denver to be given because I don't think they're that good of a team. But the Chargers are not going to. Is wide receiver Allen going to play? Because I would rather have him in the game.
You know what? Why would you not just sit him? I mean,
I don't think Allen wants to sit. He's chasing a couple records at the same time, and that's 2 games, and then he has the whole rest of the offseason. I think he'll try to play.
Green Bay and the Vikings. They're both 7-8. Interesting, because Minnesota probably can beat Detroit final game. This is the whole season for the Vikings this week, but they're down Hawkinson now.
Yeah, that's a loss, and this is the second of 2 consecutive Green Bay road games. It's not a Monday night; it's a Sunday night game, so we know that. Again, Minnesota lives and dies by the turnover ratio, and boy, have they shot themselves in the foot when they have had so many games of multiple turnovers. They're just killing themselves.
Well, disappointing because I do have the Vikings make playoffs, and I don't see a way that they're going to get in.
Yeah, I have them under 9 wins for season win total, so it's win or tie now. So I don't know that I should have won that because if they just had equal turnover variance, they would be a lot better shape than they would be in than they are in now. Pretty good home record hosting Green Bay.
I don't think well, I guess San Francisco may have to play that week 18.
Yes, they may have to play that because of the situation with Philadelphia.
I mean, they are going to have to play it. What am I saying?
Yeah.
There's just, unless they want to give up the number 1 seed, they're going to have to play it because the Eagles are going to win this week, and the Eagles are going to win out. So
this is a good year for week 18. I think it was last year. It might have been 2 years ago, but I think it was last year. We had 7 or 8 games that were completely meaningless. And I think there's going to be a lot of jockeying around in playoffs, made or not made, or home games versus not home games. I think it's going to be a pretty good week 18.
Well, I think the Rams could lose and finish 9-8. And I think they could tie Minnesota. And I don't know who gets the tiebreaker between those two.
I had to look it up. I know Seattle would be wise to win out. Seattle has to win both because they do not own tiebreaker against the Rams.
Ugh. Well, we're going to have to study that carefully. There's always that goofy stuff. You know, one of the things I want to look for this week is there a situation where something happens in an earlier game that's going to move a later game in the week's line significantly? So
we only have 3 afternoon games. We have 10 morning games.
I know, but don't forget we've got a Thursday and a Saturday. So
okay. I think it's a good point. If Cleveland wins, I think the sense of urgency is still there for all these teams. I'm looking real quickly, and I'm not sure anything happens that will change things other than maybe Denver's eliminated beforehand. Maybe, I guess Denver can't be eliminated either because Denver can still win the division. Say that out loud 3 times. Denver can still win the division.
Yeah, so can the Raiders.
So I think it's a great question you brought up, but I don't think any of the games, just the way the schedule shakes out, I don't think any of the games will influence the afternoon motivation. Could be wrong on Pittsburgh, but I'm not sure. I don't think so. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati play the same time period as well, and Denver. I have a feeling nothing happens in the morning that changes the mindset.
It does appear that I don't see anything that's going to affect the later games.
That's weird, and it's unusual.
Because if Cleveland loses, it's not. I mean, they're in the playoffs, so I mean, it's going to be hard for them not to be in the playoffs.
Correct.
They have 10 wins already, so no matter what happens, the motivation isn't significant change. Doesn't matter. I mean, if the Lions were to upset Dallas, Dallas isn't getting knocked out of the playoffs. They're not winning the division anyway. But then that would make the Lions have some incentive to play against the Vikings in Week 18.
Right. Yeah, I think we get everybody's best effort, except for if you're a fan of the Washington or Tennessee teams.
Well, there's a lot to digest. Anything else on your mind, Senor?
No, but everybody who watches this now or later in the week, as we get closer to New Year's, since this is my last show before the New Year, Happy New Year to everybody. Every once in a while, I'll try to post a tweet this week in particular, since I won't be on Friday. If something comes to mind in the NFL, I'll try to post a tweet or whatever, or respond to any questions that are asked in YouTube, and just be safe out there.
Yeah, I think there's. We're not going to have a Friday show this week, so we'll be back next year. This is it for the year. So
this is it. Yeah.
I think that's about it. Yeah. So we will be back next Tuesday. I'll be on tomorrow, Bet US at noon Pacific. And Ron will be moving again, right?
No, I'm done with that. But we'll be balancing football and a lot of family activities, but there will be articles written still. You can find them on Wager Talk, and we'll go from there. Tread carefully, but go ahead and enjoy your weekend. Good luck to everybody.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to everyone. Thanks for tuning in.